シャーロック、この写真どう思う？シャーロック。
Oh, every generation seems to believe it has found a new way to reinvent Sherlock Holmes. Move him forward in time, move him out of London, change the music, the clothes, the crimes, the technology, the chemistry set. Keep enough of the silhouette and hope the audience still recognizes the man underneath. But in 2018, Japan tried something more radical. It didn't simply modernize Sherlock Holmes. It changed his country, his language, his social world, and his gender. Hulu Japan and HBO Asia created an 8-part series set in modern Tokyo, starring Yuko Takeuchi as Sherlock and Shinori Kanjiya as Dr. Wato Tachibana. On paper, it sounded perilously close to a gimmick. This could have easily been a disaster. In practice, it became one of the strangest, sharpest, and most overlooked Sherlock adaptations of the last decade. Well, it obviously wasn't perfect, at least not without problems, but much better than anyone would have thought. So why has almost everyone forgotten her?
あった。何？花嫁が消えた？
Miss Sherlock arrived after the BBC Sherlock had already changed the rules. Benedict Cumberbatch had made the modern Holmes fashionable, brilliantly arrogant, wounded, rude, emotionally damaged, and very, very marketable. For better or worse, that became the new template.
Oh, I may be on the side of the angels, but don't think for 1 second that I am one of them.
Suddenly, every modern Sherlock had to answer the same question. Are you doing Doyle or are you doing Cumberbatch? Miss Sherlock clearly knows the BBC version exists. You can feel it in the slick surfaces, the modern crimes, the strange genius irritating the police, and the exasperated doctor being pulled into her orbit. But the show is bigger than just a Japanese imitation. Its central change is not cosmetic. Making Sherlock and Watson women in modern Tokyo changes the social temperature of the whole story. Sherlock Holmes has always been disruptive. In Victorian London, his eccentricity is almost aristocratic. He is a brilliant bachelor in rooms, surrounded by newspapers, chemistry, violin music, and bad manners. He can be strange because Victorian fiction allows certain brilliant men to be strange. But when Sherlock becomes Sarah Shelley Futaba, elegant, cold, sharp, socially impossible, the disturbance lands differently. Miss Sherlock is not just rude, she's unacceptable.
あなたが言ってたドレスの裾にできたオレンジジュースのシミ？発見されたドレスからはそんなシミは見つかっていない。それはなぜか。あなたが嘘をついたから。
There is a lazy way to talk about non-British and even non-Western Sherlocks as mere curiosities. We ask how faithful they are, how close they stay to London, how much of the original furniture they preserve. But Japan didn't suddenly discover Sherlock Holmes in 2018. Holmes had a long afterlife there, translated stories, detective manga, anime, school mysteries, puppet versions, and even Sherlock Hound, an Italian-Japanese animated series partly associated with Hayao Miyazaki. Jeremy Brett had a huge following there. In other words, Japan has been playing with Holmes for generations. So Miss Sherlock doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a culture where adaptation doesn't necessarily mean embalming. So why not a woman in Tokyo? Surprisingly, after changing so much, the machine still worked.
いらっしゃいませ。
なぜ声を出す？ごめん。
Every Sherlock lives or dies by Watson. You can survive a weakless trade or an odd Mycroft. You can even survive a strange Moriarty for a while. But if Sherlock and Watson do not work, the whole structure collapses. Here, Wato Tachibana, Wato-san, She's not just a companion with a notebook. She's a traumatized doctor back from Syria, trying to rebuild her life while being pulled into Sherlock's world. Instead of writing case notes like Conan Doyle's Watson, she processes her experiences in therapy. It moves Watson's storytelling function into a psychological space. Wato doesn't simply admire Sherlock. She has to survive her. And this is where Miss Sherlock is warmer than it first appears.
よかったわね。
何が？
シャーロックも心配だったんでしょ？ワトさん元気なかったから。
何の話？
いい友達ね。
友達じゃない。
もう本当に素直じゃないんだから。
Yuko Takeuchi's Sherlock can be theatrical and sometimes almost cartoonish. She's stylish, feline, impatient, fond of chocolate, and more comfortable with a cello than with ordinary human feeling. But with Wato, the rudeness slowly becomes attention and perhaps dependence, or even attachment disguised as familiar Sherlockian irritation. That is the old Holmes-Watson formula, just filtered through a different emotional language. The best thing about Miss Sherlock is not the mystery plotting. Some cases are too simple, some clues are too obvious, and a few twists arrive with the subtlety of a dropped piano. So this is not Granada-level Doyle with its elegant case machinery of the best Jeremy Brett episodes. And it is not even always as sharp as BBC Sherlock at its peak. Yet it has this freshness. Tokyo gives the show a different texture. Cleaner, colder, sleeker, more anonymous. Sherlock's apartment, her clothes, the police spaces, the urban night, everything has a glossy, slightly artificial beauty. At times, this makes the series feel less lived in than Baker Street, but it also gives it a distinct atmosphere of light, silence, and expansive loneliness, which is in fact not so different from fog, fireplaces, and hansom cabs. And Yuko Takeuchi's Sherlock is very alive. She's not the definitive Holmes, and she's not trying to be. She's a Holmes who proves the character can survive a surprisingly radical translation.
事件の証拠を手に入れるため、あなたはわざわざ偽装結婚を仕組んだんでしょ？
偽装結婚?
So why did this Sherlock vanish? Since it certainly wasn't a failure. Miss Sherlock had some weight behind it. It was an HBO Asia and Hulu Japan co-production. It was released internationally, it won awards. It received warm reviews from many people who expected a gimmick and found instead a real adaptation. But it had one major problem. It didn't continue. Only 8 episodes, 1 season. No long evolution, no second-year correction, no slow deepening of the Holmes-Watson relationship. It just didn't have a chance to become a habit. Miss Sherlock arrived, made its case, and stopped. Sadly, to say the least. In 2020, Yuko Takeuchi took her own life at the age of only 40, leaving her husband behind together with their 2 sons. One of them was just 1-year-old baby at the moment. And she left no note, and it has remained mystery ever since. In Japan, she was not a niche streaming curiosity. She was a major actress, widely known and widely admired. So it's impossible not to feel the sadness of an unfinished version, because this Sherlock had potential and room to grow. Yuko Takeuchi's take was faithful because Sherlock's essentials were still there: observation, arrogance, solitude, and danger. And yet she gave it her personal spin. Her Holmes became lighter, colder, more fashionable, more feline, and socially disruptive in a freshly new way. And perhaps that is why Miss Sherlock deserves to be remembered, not as a tragic or, pardon me, only as a female one, and not merely as the Japanese curiosity, but as a Sherlock adaptation that rather unconventionally worked.
じゃん。キュウリの化粧水。
ああ、
たくさん作りすぎたってシャーロックから。はい。お肌だけじゃなくて傷とかにもいいんですってよ。